Today, we're going to talk about President Trump's bold plan for Gaza to evacuate the population to Jordan and Egypt. And what the media is not telling you is that both from the standpoint of international law and history, it is actually the correct solution to the problem. Have a look at the reaction of the president of Egypt.
ظلم التاريخ اللي وقع على الفلسطينيين وتم تهجيرهم قبل كده ولم يرجعوا إلى مناطق ثبت أو سبق التأكيد لهم إن هم ممكن يرجعوا تاني بعد ما يتم تعميرها. هل ممكن الكلام ده يتكرر مرة تاني؟ أنا ما افتكرش. وبقول إن الشعب المصري لو أنا طلبت منه هذا الأمر هيخرج كله في الشارع المصري ويقول لي لا. لا تشارك في ظلم. لا تشارك في ظلم. أنا بقولها بمنتهى الوضوح. ترحيل وتهجير الشعب الفلسطيني من مكانه هو ظلم. لا يمكن أن نشارك.
Now, before we get into the legal and historical issues, here's what President Trump had to say when he was told that Egypt said no.
The President and the King of Jordan have both said that they won't take in displaced people from Gaza like you suggested. Is there anything you can do to make them do that? I mean, tariffs against those countries, for example?
They will do it. They will do it.
What makes you say that?
They're going to do it. Okay? We do a lot for them, and they're going to do it.
So Donald Trump suggests that the solution to the crisis in Gaza right now, because Gaza is mostly destroyed, is that the population should be transferred en masse to two neighboring Arab countries, Jordan and Egypt. And as you saw in that video, the reaction of the Egyptian president was to call it an injustice. The King of Jordan, for his part, said that his firm position is to keep the Palestinians on their land in Gaza and to guarantee their legitimate rights. So the Egyptians call it an injustice, and the Jordanians are talking about Palestinian rights. Let's talk about international law for a moment. According to the Geneva Conventions, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, Article 14 states that everyone has the right to seek and enjoy asylum in other countries. And according to the 1951 Refugee Convention, which expanded on Article 14, Egypt and Jordan have both signed that document. It states that everyone is guaranteed asylum and safety and protection from war zones. So refugees fleeing war zones to neighboring countries is a law that the Egyptians and the Jordanians are bound by. What this means is that since the beginning of the war in Gaza, the Egyptians and Jordanians who have been preventing Gazans from coming into their countries to seek asylum are in direct violation of international law. So it's amazing that they could call this an injustice and a denial of human rights. The denial of human rights that is going on right now is that the Jordanians and the Egyptians are not allowing Gazans into their countries. Now, if we take a look at history, it gets even worse. Let's go back in time. 1947, when the United Nations votes to partition the land of Israel, what's today Israel, including Judea, Samaria, the Gaza Strip, to partition it into two states, one Palestinian Arab state and one Jewish state. This is the original two-state solution. But what happened is that the Arabs rejected it and the Jews accepted it. Had the Arabs accepted that solution, the original two-state solution, there would be a Palestinian state alongside a Jewish state. There never would have been a war in 1948, and not a single Palestinian Arab would have been displaced from his or her home. There would be no refugees in the Gaza Strip at all. There'd be no refugee camps. The only reason there are refugees in the Gaza Strip, hundreds of thousands of them, or millions today, is because the Arab armies attacked the brand new state of Israel. The two largest armies in that attack, without which it would not have happened, were Egypt and Jordan. In other words, Egypt and Jordan launched the war that caused all of these Arabs to become refugees. And not only that, it wasn't even the Israeli army that chased them out of their homes, that turned them into refugees. There is a lot of historical documentation that shows that it was the Arab leadership themselves who encouraged the Arabs to leave. So, for example, on March 8th, 1948, the Arab Higher Committee, which was the leadership of the Palestinian Arabs, their official leadership at the time ordered most of the Arabs in parts of Jerusalem to leave their homes. And they stated, quote, "Any opposition to this order is an obstacle to the holy war and will hamper the operations of the fighters in these districts." In other words, the Arab leadership told the Palestinian Arabs to leave their homes, to flee, to get behind their army lines, to get out of the way while they destroyed the brand new Jewish state. The only problem is that they weren't successful at that. Or to quote Khaled al-Azam, the Syrian prime minister back then in 1948, who was part of the Arab leadership that encouraged the Palestinian Arabs to leave their homes, he wrote in his memoirs the following, quote, "Since 1948, we have been demanding the return of the refugees to their homes, but we ourselves are the ones who encouraged them to leave." Look at that. The Arab leadership told them to leave their homes, to flee, to get behind the front lines into areas that were controlled by the Arab armies. And that's how you have hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees in Judea and Samaria, what's known as the West Bank, and in the Gaza Strip. Well, when that war ended at the end of 1948, the Gaza Strip was in Egyptian hands. Judea and Samaria were in Jordanian hands, and that's where those refugees were. And then for 19 years, from 1948 to 1967, the Egyptians controlled the Gaza Strip. It was under their authority completely. And during that time, they did not allow the Gazans to rebuild their lives. They did not allow them into mainland Egypt. They didn't allow them to emigrate elsewhere. And the Jordanians also during those years did not allow any Gazans to come into their country as refugees. There was no effort made by them to resettle these refugees. In 1952, so 4 years into this mess, UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency, which has been in the headlines since the beginning of this war, set up a $200 million fund to provide homes and jobs for the refugees, and that fund was never used. It was never touched. The Arab leadership actually wanted to keep the Palestinians in Gaza as refugees. And on the Jordanian side, in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank, for 19 years, the Jordanians ruled the area. Why didn't they help the Palestinians there achieve their independence? Because they wanted them to remain refugees. That's the history behind it. The truth is that Jordan and Egypt are both legally and historically more responsible than anybody for the fact that you have millions of refugees in the Gaza Strip. If any countries are obligated to help these Gazan refugees and to resettle them and relocate them, it is Jordan and Egypt. They're the ones responsible. And this is what no one's telling you about Donald Trump's plan. His plan isn't just a solution to the problem and a humanitarian way to get these people a better life so they're out of a conflict zone. This is also correct according to international law and according to history.